Okay, sounds good. All right, it is 4:04. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order July 22nd. We roll call of planning commission members, Howard Tritz, Joey Edwards.
Here.
Steve Stevens.
Here.
Dave Clark Farrell.
Here.
And Jason Marufo.
Here.
And Heather Lind here. County Commissioner Fiedler,
Here.
Commissioner Mudge, Commissioner Edwards. Okay. Any changes or additions to the agenda?
Staff has nothing.
Okay. We have minutes to approve from June 24th. We had a chance to review those minutes.
That needs to approve the minutes from the June 24th meeting.
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Great. Updates from staff?
So we do have some applications coming up. We talked about a conditional use permit on Sugarloaf Mountain for a group camp. We also have Titan Gold is making an application for a gravel pit at Box Creek. So I do believe we set both of those hearings. Cece, do we have any other set hearings yet?
No,
Just those two. However, we are always working on completeness review with applicants and we do have more applications coming in. We did receive a notification from CDPHE that the Gateway Development has made application for their wastewater treatment plant. And so we have received that notice. They are looking to combine both the Gateway Community and Mountain Valley Estates into designing that facility. That would result in one discharge permit and something that we were, believe we sent back comments to the state that we think that that is a good solution to a situation that is kind of constantly needing state oversight with the existing wastewater treatment that is in place at Mountain Valley Estates. So we did respond to that. There is some CDOT planning that's going to be occurring down at the junction of Highway 82 and 24. There is a roundabout traffic plan improvement that's is in the midst of design, and CDOT did provide us some information on that we'll be sending out to you just so you can kind of see their early schematics on that and the information, and they've done their historic review of the property and assets. They indicate that they believe there will be little to no change in the Windmark property. That's the closest property that would be potentially affected. But you'll see that in the report and we can send you over those specifications. So those are some updates that we've received and some information. The other, I think, update that we have is that Union Milling has been required to continue monitoring their groundwater. The samples that they have taken, they're gonna need another year's worth of sampling on groundwater before they'll be able to find out the determination of their DRMS permit, and then based on that, then they may come in for a conditional use permit in Lake County. And I think that's pretty much all of the updates that I can think that we've received in the last little bit. Cece, do you have anything else?
I think short-term rental licenses, there's been kind of an increase in demand over the last few weeks. So we are down to 6 standard licenses with a few in the queue. So we can maybe expect those to run out in the next few months.
And I think that brings up also backcountry zoning. We are working on potentially a couple new site plans maybe coming in for some backcountry structure, just to kind of give you an idea of what kind of interest that we had this season in that. So I think that we've got one that will be heard. It was an illegal structure prior to the backcountry possibility of getting a backcountry structure, so they'll have a variance hearing tomorrow. If that is successful and receives variance, then they'll be coming in for a backcountry site plan review. But it is a way for this particular property to possibly come into compliance under the new code. So I think that rounds out anything that we have update wise.
Great. Any questions?
Gateway's the one north of 24 and 91?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
project, a full year from now of monitoring before they can?
I approximately a year. I
Right.
can't remember exactly when they were delivered that notice. It's probably been about a month now. But it was going
Next
to
spring
be, it'll be
period.
next spring, early summer before, we may hear from them. And,
Thanks.
and they get a response on their, state permit. So,
Heather, and can I mention an update on the CDOT and
Yes.
MOF planning? So it's been in the works for like quite a while, we have the CDOT grant and we put out an RFP for planning, got 3 qualified bids. So the next couple of weeks, as long as it takes us to review and do any sort of final checking, we'll award that contract and actually start that planning work. So just as a quick refresher, there are 4 study areas. The curve out by Mountain View, that sort of blind curve that separates the 2 halves of that. The other is the kind of like the Safeway traffic light out to the intersection of Highway 91 and 24. And then I think of it like the CMC Forest Service intersection, where there's like multiple, mineral belt crosses, the path crosses, there's cars back up dumping, at the dump there, so, and then the 4th is more preliminary, but just trying to see if there's a feasible alternate trucking route that doesn't go through downtown in 24. So those 4 areas, in the next couple weeks, we'll have an award. Again, we got 3 good qualified applications for that work. And that planning will take over 12 months, but it'll start rolling.
What's the Mountain View one, where?
So it's the curve when you come off of Escondido Flats and you come through the mobile home there.
That, I thought you were talking about Mountain View
Yeah.
Drive, I was like,
Sorry,
what
yeah,
would they do
yeah.
over there? Okay, that makes sense,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So, it drops from allegedly 55, but
Right, but does it, yeah.
down to 40 or 45 there. So just trying to see if there's some way, and the focus of all these is trying to increase both vehicle but also pedestrian and multimodal safety. So there, because it splits that large community, the sort of Safeway northern gateway, I think we call it in the application, especially as we get more residential development around there, it becomes a bit more of a mixed use and not it's been understandably very auto-centric
Yeah.
to now, but as we get, thinking 10 years out, like a lot more residential around there. And then, like I sort of mentioned, the problems around CMC, there's potentially some development there, but just there's more road crossings and ways cars come at you.
Right.
So trying to do some better potential traffic planning, thinking about different access points, and then obviously like the truck route with CJK Milling and others coming in, just seeing if there's some feasible way to route more truck traffic, not go through downtown.
And I, just to piggyback on that too, we'll be putting out our RFP for our impact fee study. And that would align with future planning around that bypass road, and supporting safety services within the county. So we're also working on getting the impact fee study out as well. Great.
Okay, I'll move us down into new business. We have file 24-23, which is the Timber Ranch Major Subdivision and Planned Unit Development Sketch Plan. And just a quick reminder for anybody on Zoom, if your full name isn't showing up and we don't already know who you are, if you can please either change your name or make sure you send us CC a chat with your name, just so that we have that for our public record.
Chat is not enabled.
Oh, it's not enabled, so then please just rename yourself on there if that's possible. And then I'll read this opening statement for us tonight. The Lake County Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will now conduct a joint public hearing. The statement I am reading shall be incorporated into and made part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners have jurisdiction to conduct a joint public hearing on a major subdivision, sketch plan, and planned unit development sketch plan application under sections 3.16 and 3.11 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the sketch plan application should be approved. In considering the matter, the commissions will address the approval criteria set forth in sections 3.16.3H and 3.11.3H of the Lake County Land Development Code. The procedure to be followed in this hearing will be, 1, members of the commission and or the board will disclose if they've had any ex parte communications. 2, the county staff will make an initial presentation. 3, the applicant may then make their presentation. 4, after that, any other persons supporting or opposing the application may present their evidence. 5, supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the commission and the board. Once questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by the chair. And the applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. The parties and witnesses are asked to not submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, please simply say so. The chair will also require that all comments be made to the planning commission and the board, and that there be no dialogue between the applicant and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the chair will then entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will leave the meeting, and the chair of the planning commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take the form of one of the following recommendations. 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. Or 4, deny the application. The planning director shall make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the recommendation of the commission. The commission's recommendation will be in the form of a statement of motion. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? All right, hearing none, I will now ask each planning commission member and then each county commissioner if you've had any ex parte communications to disclose, and if so, please disclose them now. We still don't have any new commission members on there, do we? Okay. Joey Edwards,
No.
Steve Stevens,
No.
Dave Clark Farrell,
None.
Jason Marufo,
None.
Heather Lynn, none. Commissioner Fiedler.
None.
Great. I'll now ask county staff to start your presentation.
Thank you so much. If it is okay with the planning commission and the board, I'm actually gonna let the applicant go first. No objections with that kind of presentation this evening. I will follow up with staff's review. But if that is all right with everyone, this property is owned by Jack and Cindy Saunders. And Nick Costello is our developer, and he's going to be presenting the file. So I'm gonna open up the floor to Nick if there's no objection to the order of the presentation.
Sure.
Put it on the team member slide, and I'll keep you from there. Yes, it's is there enough space for me over here? Is it okay if I
Yeah.
close this just a little?
Absolutely, right ahead.
My Warriors, guess I've got a Marco Rubio. All right, good afternoon. First off, I just wanted to thank Ann and Cece and Paul, if he's here, for their guidance in helping us through this process so far. We really appreciate it. We are jazzed to be here, and certainly grateful for the opportunity to share our project. My name is Nick Costello. I'm spearheading this development alongside Jack and Cindy Saunders, as well as our planner, Melissa Kendrick, and our civil engineer, Joe McLissick. I get asked this question everywhere I go around this town, why do you come out here? For me, it's really two reasons. The scenery is obviously spectacular. I'm an outdoors guy myself. My favorite things to do are hike and snowboard, so it's paradise. I really enjoy spending time out here. The second, because I tend to bring my work with me, from a home builder's perspective, my initial observation was that this is a market in which demand far exceeds supply. And as a result, prices have risen dramatically in recent years, as you guys all know. It's evident when you see those 140-year-old homes that used to sell for $200,000 that are now approaching $500,000. I think everybody in this room would agree that affordability has become a major problem here. To me, the only real solution is to build your way out of it, to inject new supply into the market, which will help temper prices and temper demand. And we believe that this project could make a real impact towards that end. Go ahead, slide me. So Timber Ranch aims to build 87 new homes over the next 8 years. The breakdown would be 57 single-family versus 30 townhomes, 10 of which would be deed restricted in perpetuity for workforce housing. So those units would sell for approximately a few $100,000 under market. Those buyers would pay no more than 30% of their income towards housing-related costs. The remaining units would be sold at market. But I like to note that given the volume that we plan to build annually, up to about a dozen units, I think we'll have to price them pretty aggressively to get them sold. So I like to believe that those units will also be pretty obtainable. Slide. So, location. Jack and Cindy's parcel is 43 acres. It's located just over a mile west of downtown, at the intersection of Evergreen Drive and County Road 4. In reading the comprehensive plan, my sense was this site checked a lot of boxes for potential development. Especially given the proximity to schools, the downtown business core, as well as major utilities. So you've got sewer, water, power, high-speed internet are all very close by. Not to mention its topo is practically ideal. It slopes 1 to 2%. Slide. So, like Ann mentioned, this would be a two-step process. We've got 2 applications in. The first step, the major subdivision aspect of it, would be to split the 43 acres into 4 tracts. Now, tracks C, D, and A on the north side would remain as large parcels. It'd be up to Jack and Cindy if they wanted to develop those any further in the future. It's possible that they could just become homestead sites. Now, tract B along the bottom, which runs along County Road 4, is 16.5 acres. I'll be purchasing that with the intention of rezoning to a PUD in order to replat and build those 87 units. Slide. So here is the east side of our site plan. We've got a double-loaded street with entrances off Evergreen Drive and County Road 4. There'll be a pedestrian sidewalk along all roads in the development. The median lot dimensions will be roughly 50 by 110. There'll be 2 new parks, and then there's gonna be a trail that runs along County Road 4 within a 25-foot easement, I guess you could say it's part of our dedication. We're working with the county on types of services, but once completed, that will allow pedestrians and bike riders to travel safely all the way into town. Slide. So here's the west side. We've got our second park right here. We've got our third entrance off County Road 4. And then we've got a cul-de-sac on the far west side. Slide. So here is a potential 2-story modular design. Every unit would have an attached 1 or 2 car garage. Most, if not all, floor plans would feature 3 beds, 2.5 baths. Every townhome and house will have a front yard and a backyard. The average lot size is 5,200 square feet, and that is on average 1,000 square feet larger per lot than the Westwood subdivision across the street on Evergreen Drive. I think that wraps up with what I've got. I'll let Melissa take it home. Thank you.
I'll stand up as well. Go next slide, please, Cece. So, as you know, there are approval criteria that have to be met for an application for you to make a recommendation to the board. And And we combined these a little bit, and Nick has talked quite a bit about them already. But there's the sketch plan approval criteria and the PUD, and there's a lot of overlap. I won't read to you, you got to read the staff report. But I think one of the really important ones always is the comprehensive plan and compliance with the comprehensive plan. And this is an area that really contemplates the expansion of residential growth for the community. So this residential infill is encouraged at higher densities for the reasons that were stated. We're close to schools, we're close to downtown, we're close to services. So it's really appropriate to sort of move in this westerly direction. We'll talk a little bit about the PUD zoning, but again, there's services that are available. So one of the important things, the efficient extension of water and sewer services. And we have letters in the staff report that indicate we're working with Leadville Sanitation District as well as Parkville Water. And, we're gonna be able to provide an extension of those services pretty easily into this site. And then, and Nick touched on the topography, and we had a good environmental study done for this early sketch plan stage that really kind of sets the course, and there are no red flags there in terms of moving forward. And the compatibility with surrounding land uses, there's a variety of lot sizes that surround this, but certainly the Westwood development is brought in a higher density than we've seen historically, but again, the comp plan and actually the zoning, the existing zoning for this site is urban residential. And the rezoning, moving to the second portion of this, is really to tailor the product that Nick is designing for this site in terms of dimensional criteria, so setbacks in particular. We really kind of tailored that to this PUD document. So the zoning control document is really sort of the land development code, if you will, for a PUD. And an important part of that has to do with the affordable housing and the affordability of housing. And some of that is achieved, as you know, in the comp plan by the goal of just higher densities and a variety of housing types. So having single family and duplexes, we believe, starts to create this mixed income, mixed use neighborhood that the comprehensive plan contemplates for this. And Nick touched on the 10 units that are being proposed. So we're looking at that up to 140 AMI. And we're working with a housing authority to make sure that the proper agreements will be in place so that those units will be protected in perpetuity for the workforce in the community. So with that, then if we can go to the next slide, which are the conditions of approval. There are 10 of these, and we agree, Nick agrees with all 10 conditions. Just touching on them, condition 3 and 5 have to do with compliance with the road standards and making sure that, we do that. There's some really simple touching up that we need to do to make sure the lane widths are the proper distance. And I had a conversation today with Mike Irwin about that. Number 4 has to do with the sidewalks. We're certainly gonna provide, as Nick said, the necessary sidewalks to get from that regional trail, which is gonna be a great asset to the community, as well as the region, because you can get on that trail and make it up to the school at this point. So that will be a big asset. Number 7 has to do with adding possibly home occupation and home daycare. So we are in agreement with that. Those are allowable uses in the code right now and under urban residential. So we'll add those to our zoning control document. That will certainly add to the community. There is the 8-foot trail and here in terms of a hard surface. And my conversation with Mike Irwin, they're looking at a new surface treatment really, actually that creates a hardened surface. It's early in those conversations, so we'll work with staff in developing the preliminary plan to make sure it meets, the requirements that the county wants to see. So I think with that, those are the conditions, and I think we appreciate your time. The last one says thank you. So thank you for your time, and we can answer questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Nick and Melissa for that presentation, and mine will be entirely redundant, so here we go. This is, we can go to the second slide. And so it's just, we're in that conceptual proposal, generalized discussion, apparent merits of the proposal, perceived problems. That's the basis of the sketch plan review. Our next stages, of course, will be going into preliminary and final plat. And next slide. Again, this is the parcel, the 43 acres, and then the next slide shows the sketch plan in a little more detail of both, so you can see the track A, C, D, and then B, and it kind of illustrates that, we've got the PUD in track B, and then the other 3 lots up above. This wasn't able to go through another minor subdivision because it was granted a subdivision exemption 24 years ago, and under code, you can't do a second minor subdivision except every 25 years. So it forced the first stage of this into a major subdivision. Normally, dividing this parcel into 4 parcels could have been done by a minor, and then Nick could have purchased the parcel and come to us with a subdivision PUD. However, because of that subdivision exemption, we had to go from the very first stage of a major subdivision. Next slide.
What is the access for the other tracks?
Oh, yep, absolutely, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit, it's a condition, that we're gonna, go back to that one. That's a really great question.
Point it out, or?
Yeah, it's right by, the park there, so that's a 35-foot access
Oh, I
and
see,
utility
okay.
easement, to the other tracks. But as we discussed in the staff report, the urban residential, we'll go ahead and just kind of, talk about that a little bit. Urban residential density, which is going to be allowed in tracks A, C, and D after this, the standard zoning, allows up to 5.8 dwelling units per acre, or we round up to 6. So potentially, the density of these other tracks could be much higher. And so one of the conditions and discussion points is we would like the developer to consider maybe making that access more generous at preliminary, to consider the future development of track C, D, and A. The intention right now may be to only have those as single-family sites, but the zoning would allow a much higher densification of that in the future. So it's a great question to be thinking about at this time of what will be left after we subdivide the parcel and then move into PUD. So that's a really great and beneficial question, and something that we conditioned the preliminary to consider. So this just goes into what we've already talked about. The subdivision will be the 4 lots, and there is the size of each of those, and then track B, the PUD. The density is actually being proposed is actually less than what the current zoning is. The PUD is being sought because of lot sizes and setbacks, but they are not asking for an increased density. And as the applicant pointed out, this will be not as dense as the subdivision to the east. So 87 total lots, 57 single family, and 15 duplex parcels. So out of that is that 11.5% affordable units that we would look to deed restrict in perpetuity. And again, what we've talked about, go ahead, utilities are Parkville Water, Leadville Sand, Excel Energy, go ahead.
Quick question, because there's been some terms, both workforce housing and affordable housing. Can we,
So they're
Have a better
justifying
understanding of what-
that at 140% AMI. So they're defining it as AMIs of 140%. So a deed restriction would require an income And I think it's still gonna be vetted with the housing authority to determine what the nature of that deed restriction may be. There may be qualifications that you have to meet the income limits, and then there may be work-related requirements as well. So those qualifications, the applicant is working with the housing authority right now to better define that. So a preliminary, we'll have a better idea of what that deed restriction will look like.
Do you guys generally use those two words interchangeably or no?
No,
no,
two different meanings.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
we
because
just,
it's actually a big conversation right now.
yeah,
Got it.
we just had a previous, our last land use application that we had didn't have any AMIs attached to it. So this has AMIs, potential workforce, potential AMI, but that'll be the next stage of discussion with the housing authority to help fine tune what that deed restriction should be. Okay. The approval criteria, as Melissa already went through, those are the basis of what we're making decisions on this evening. Staff would suggest that the applicant has done, as illustrated in the staff report and in the discussion contained in there, a very good job of providing ways in which all of those criteria have been met, or we have provided conditions of approval that as conditioned, all of those criteria could be met this evening if the planning commission would like to move forward. Next slide, we'll go into the conditions. So first, there were some fugitive dust concerns, or just a mindfulness within the CLT Thompson discussion of OU9. And we do have through our super fund regulations within our land development code, we have what's called a best management practice, which we will require the applicant to maintain while they're doing the overlap grading phase of the development, consistent with, again, the recommendations from CTEL Thompson in their environmental review of the property. The applicant shall improve the 2 water retention tracks so they are usable when they are dry. So this project has not quite our recommended open space requirement of 20 to 25% of open space. But we are considering through the review, providing the fact that they are providing the trail system and the affordable housing, that I think we're at 17% open space. So if they could consider these 2 water retention areas, which organically are dry at different times of the year, perhaps they're mowed or maintained in a manner in which they could be usable when they are dry. So that they could be considered additional open space. It would just be a way to kind of push that open space a little bit more generously than the 17% that's being provided. Although there are the 2 parks and the trail and the affordable housing. So all of those together, again, the open space requirement is a recommendation that we would like them to come generally towards. However, there is consideration for those other features and other deed restricted units. The applicant shall explain a preliminary plat, the intention of the proposed narrowness of the easternmost Virginia Drive from County Road forward, given that the right of way does not appear to be any narrower. Already talked to the applicant about that, and those will be addressed. At preliminary, the applicant shall discuss the lack of sidewalks on the 2 accesses to County Road 4 or provide them. If provided, pedestrian crossings shall also be provided across Timber Ranch Drive, and in addition, the applicant shall consider the neighborhood trail connectivity over Evergreen Drive and County Road 4 and potentially provide pedestrian crossings at all 3 locations. The preliminary plat shall adequately address these items. And so what we want the applicant to do is just consider at this point those 3 potential pedestrian crossings. At Virginia Avenue, it aligns with Mountain Gate subdivision, and there is good line of sight for a pedestrian crossing in that, in that area. We're far enough out of the turn on County Road 4 that it would be a safer crossing location. And then there is the additional crossing on County Road 4 as well. And so we would like the applicant, through their engineering review and further designing of the site, the possibility of crossings in those three areas. We have the trail system at Mountain Gate through Mountain Pines all the way to Turquoise Lake Estates that would connect all of that portion of the trail system that we currently have, and then it would also connect to the portion within the Westwood subdivision, furthering our connectivity goals and getting that pedestrian traffic off of the very dangerous County Road 4 that we, and the situations that we continually have on County Road 4. The applicant shall explain a preliminary plat, the intention of unequal driving widths on Timber Drive, understanding that one lane at 10 and the other at 11 may not be acceptable. I think that they're already in discussion with Public Works and there's some fine tuning of their roadways. The applicant shall be prepared at preliminary, this is the one that you just asked about, Heather, to address the adequacy of the width of the access to tracks C and D and how this access will be able to accommodate the UR zoning of those two tracks. Also, how will the access be built, maintained, and owned? The PUD zoning control document shall include the possibility of home occupations and home daycare, either as conditional uses or uses by right or both, depending on the impact. Again, thinking about the density and things that will support our local needs, and both of those are significant needs within the community. The 8-foot trail on County Road 4 shall be a hard surface, and we are sharing with the applicant, as Melissa said, that our Public Works Director, Michael Irwin, has found potentially some cost-effective methods to providing that hard surfacing in a more economical fashion than maybe some other cost prohibitive in the past. So we are hopeful that that will be realized through the trail. And then number 5, the applicant shall develop and implement a noxious weed management plan as recommended by the Lake County Soil Conservation District. And all statements made by the applicant in his application and in hearing are considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. And just to, the application has been duly noticed, so the site was posted, mailed to adjacent property owners, and published within the newspaper. We did not receive any public comment prior to the hearing this evening, and referrals were sent to the Office of Emergency Management, Public Works, the Lake County School District, the Soil Conservation District, Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue, the Housing Authority, Parkville Water, Leadville Sanitation, St. Vincent Health Ambulance Service, Excel Energy, the Sheriff's Department, Public Health, the City of Leadville, and CDPHE, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. All of those responses that were received are contained within the staff report. And that concludes everything that staff has this evening, unless there are any questions.
Before we take public comment, are there any questions for staff?
I got one quick question just regarding County 4, the traffic on there.
Yes.
Was there a traffic study done, the full occupancy of track B? I mean, if we looked at traffic flow and,
We have done a traffic statement, and then we look forward to doing a fleshed out study during preliminary.
okay.
And that aligns with code's requirements.
And question, you said about 12 homes per year, and what percentage of those would be the workforce or affordable housing, as you call it, as a,
I think we'd roughly try to keep it proportional,
okay,
so we'd spread out the affordable units throughout the project. We'd be building them every year,
okay.
so not on the back end.
Is there, I mean, only word I can come up with is phasing, but is there a building plan as far as, is it gonna be,
Looking to do 3 phases and start on the east side.
Okay, so it will move down.
Yes. The first phase would run right to the west side of Virginia Avenue. So you'd have those two methods of ingress and egress
Yeah,
right there.
but that's kind of how you're building it too.
Yeah.
It's just like as far as construction and things, okay.
Yeah, and then that was another question I had, the property across Evergreen that's building out I can't remember the name of the.
Westwoods.
Westwoods, thank you. They clear cut all of that, all the way to the end.
I'm not gonna do that.
Okay.
I
It's
like-
not stated in there, so you could
I-
do whatever you wanted when
Well,
you got
I
approved.
we can add that to the preliminary.
Only because when we talk about noxious weed plan, I think it would be more difficult to maintain the disturbed earth. You know, if it's just clear cut all the way, like the property across the way.
Oh, so that would be the preference?
No, I'm saying it would be more difficult to maintain.
Oh,
if
more,
you-
absolutely.
You know, what they've done across the way.
I think our goal as of now is to, we'll take down the trees in the right of way, we'll start with that. And then as we get to each individual home site, we'll take down only the necessary amount of trees, to reflect the fire mitigation plan. We'll try to keep as much as we can.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like realistically, on that small of a lot, with building and foundations and all of that, like the likelihood of keeping many of those trees isn't realistic.
Right.
So I think that's like, not necessarily fair to put that on them, because I would be surprised if they're able to keep very
Yeah,
many trees at all.
I can't imagine you being able to keep many trees except the parts where there's the little parks and whatnot, because the close proximity of the buildings, I think would be.
The average house depth as of now would be around 55 feet, and the average lot size is more like 110. Plus, we've got another 25 feet going towards County Road 4, in which we won't be touching any trees except for the proposed trail. And I think the goal of the trail is to have it kind of meander a little bit.
Okay, cause I think is CTL Thompson it said they did the report, but it was when it was snow covered, so they
Right.
couldn't see a whole lot, but I noticed that during that time, they also did some wildfire mitigation, I think, to the existing trees on the whole entire property, or a good portion of it. But I don't know if you were here for when the river was there along County Road 4.
I've heard.
It meandered too.
Our civil engineer was actually out here a couple weeks ago with Right Wire Engineers, and they looked at that very site.
Okay.
Yeah.
And cause my concern is that 25 feet, I mean, I think in some areas it was well beyond 25 feet and took out a good number of vegetation and some smaller trees along that way.
Okay. So then might be appropriate to cut in that swale as part of our plan.
I mean, well, cause you're talking about the different trails types and the hardscape, the one that's to the east, the existing one beyond the Westwoods, that one's been beat up pretty good, and I don't know if you've walked on it, but there is no dirt left, it's mostly rock. You know, the trail to Elbert is nicer than that trail, I would argue. And so the potential students going to that school, I don't know if it's fair to say that they can walk there because it's full of snow. I don't ever see kids traveling on that trail except in the summertime when there's no snow on either side, both the cemeteries, either of the cemetery sides. So, to say that it's gonna be good access, I would have a hard time believing that, with the amount of snow, and I don't think that trail has been maintained. So far as snow, I mean,
Yeah, I don't know whose responsibility would be to maintain,
yeah,
For that
so I don't see that
piece,
as
so.
like a, yeah.
it would be a summer, I
It's more of a
think the other
summer.
thing on the trail, and I think this is getting a little off topic, but just an FYI, I guess, is that I know that there's currently a group trying to work on the fact that because there is an easement or trail already in place on
The south
the
side.
south side of the road, And there could potentially be a way to create that within a county right of way on County Road 9 down towards Leadville Junction, is to try to create a mineral belt trail extension from the mineral belt trail. But that would be on the south side of the road, which is why I was so frustrated when they did Westwoods on the north side of the road, because I'm like, you already have a trail on the south side, so I don't know why we just switched sides of the road, and then now kids have to cross that really weird street that has no good intersection, so I just like, before we do that again, not to say you're still gonna not need something on the front, I think it would be interesting to have a conversation with a couple of the people that are working on that to see how feasible it is, see what the county thinks, and then also Road and Bridge, because if we can just get it aligned with one side and there's crosswalks to get to one side, and then you have access and a safer crossing up by the schools than is there currently, that might be the benefit, so that's just one thing I wanted to point out, but.
We're certainly open to input, and if you guys decided that you wanted to divert those resources towards extending the trail on the south side instead,
Yeah.
we're open to that.
Will these have basements as an option, or are they what? kind
Most
of-
likely no, just be crawl space.
Just crawl space?
Yeah, and in
Okay.
order to keep the cost down, we're gonna keep the square footage roughly within 1,500 to 1,800 square feet.
And on the trail, I just think to consider neighborhood connectivities too. That you've got, you have an existing neighborhood to the east. You have existing neighborhoods on the north and south, and so, great if at some one point, there had been collective planning to make the south side, so I just some thoughts about, making sure that you've got neighborhood connectivity.
Yeah, I think I was more so just saying it from the perspective of, he's absolutely right, because of the one that was made from Westwoods to that weird street it's destroyed. I mean, it's destroyed after 1 year. And because it's not meant to be down the hillside from the road and get all the runoff and all of that, so like if the better solution is for kids to be walking on the other side of the street for the trail to actually stay maintained, it just would be good to get everybody on the same page as far as what makes the most sense for that, but not necessarily have to take away what's still interconnectivity within those different developments, but as far as connecting to town, I think we need somebody that's planning that out a little bit better.
I was just gonna mention on the actual right of way on County Road 4, Jack and I were actually out there a few months ago and we measured it because it's staked on both sides. In fact, we found a pin on one side, so the road is not built through the middle of the right of way. It's hugged towards, I wanna say, was it the north side? It was hugged toward the north side, so that means there's extra right of way space on that south side before that 25-foot easement even starts, so it wouldn't necessarily be along the road. I think there's like another 15 feet or so, then another 25 feet. So we might be able to get, well into where it's pretty level for the trail. And we could always hug the trail on the very edge of the easement.
But anyway, that's all can happen between now and preliminary plat.
Another question I had is the tie-in to the sanitation. Where is that exactly happening?
So that was an interesting part, because the project initially was smaller. We thought we were gonna tie in at Virginia Avenue, but that's a whole different story with sanitation. There is a manhole down at Snowshoe Rabbit Drive, which is the road that you use to access West Pines. So we're gonna be coming out of there. JVA has reviewed a preliminary design. So it's roughly 200 to 250 feet to the edge of the western boundary of track B. And then the line will come up at a 90-degree angle and then go right down the center of the road. So pretty efficient.
Okay, I was curious about the disruption to County Road 4 and then, rehabilitating where that is at, 'cause
So it would just be that first like 250 feet where we'd be extending the sewer in the right of way, and then from there, it would go right up into Jack's property.
Okay. 'Cause when they did all the gas stuff in town, it's much worse than how it began, and County Road 4 is deteriorating more and more frequently, and so to disrupt it and then, what that's gonna look like afterwards. So I didn't know how much was gonna be down the middle of the right of way,
Oh,
how much it would be disturbed.
we wouldn't have to touch the pavement at all.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
Okay.
the manhole is at that north, eastern, it's like right by the mailboxes, right behind the mailboxes.
okay,
So we would just tie in right there and then go down the right of way, so no pavement,
okay,
yeah.
good to know.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Maybe could you comment a little bit more on what you're thinking on the breakdown between single family duplexes and town homes or town houses?
So we're currently platted for 57 single family, and then there would be 15 duplex lots, so that equates to 30 townhomes.
So you're using townhome and duplex kind of interchangeably?
Yeah, so, yeah, 15 duplex lots, and then each one of those, as they get built, they'll be replatted along the marriage line.
Okay,
One thing actually, a good opportunity to note is the designs we're working with right now. The dividing line for the townhomes would be within the garages. So their garages would back up to each other, but the homes would share no common walls.
And the workforce housing, are those gonna be
Within the townhomes,
within the townhomes only?
Yes.
So none of the single family?
not at this point. I'm already building them at a loss.
Do we have the?
Yes.
Track Saunders,
No comment at the moment.
Okay.
Answers later.
Cindy,
Same with Jack.
Peter Day. Okay. Robert Forbes,
Yes. About Jack's property, he's saying that it's gonna be homestead property, C and D. And there'll only be one house put up, and it's gonna be buffer zone in the paperwork. I'm very concerned that property's gonna get developed. And so with all these new homes coming in, we're gonna have I live in West Pines, and it's a real problem with all this development. I don't have a problem with C and D if it's a homestead property. And it's not, that's it, one house. But if that's gonna be tried to be divided, it's really getting problem. I wonder is you're going to, developer going to pay for a traffic light at County Road 4 in Evergreen? Was I mean, you're gonna have one or two car garages on each unit. That's a lot of cars. People are, commuting. And I don't know what's gonna happen to Jack's property, but seems like a traffic light would be appropriate.
okay, thank you. Let's see, sorry, I lost my place here, Bob Costello.
Nothing.
Okay. Tim Green. Danelle Johnson.
No.
Kelly Cecil.
Nope.
Okay. Maurice Cecil. Okay. Melissa Kendrick, Nick Costello, and Eric Lane.
Yes. Will there be street parking or will all the parking be in driveways and garages?
Driveways. I'm sorry.
Okay, and was that the only thing you had?
Trees, possibly replacing with one aspen tree per yard or something like that.
Yes. Okay.
That's enough, isn't it?
Do I have anybody on Zoom that wishes to make public comment? And if so, please raise your hand and or unmute if somebody else isn't speaking. Is it? like scroll, are there more
Oh,
than
no,
those?
that's it.
I do have another comment.
Okay,
If Jack's going to homestead property, both of those, I think it's, and, a buffer zone, I think it's appropriate for some type of document to be filed to restrict the property for that. Jack filed that.
and are you, where are you seeing that, where were you getting the information that those?
97-page document.
Right, but I don't think there's anything in there that restricts it from ever being,
No, I'm asking Jack to put that.
oh, you want that to happen, okay,
Yes.
that's your request, got it.
County can require it, but I'd like Jack to do that, so we don't have a million homes in that area.
So tonight, what we are, just to kind of explain where we're at, is we've got two separate applications here. One is approving a major subdivision, which allows Jack to create these multiple parcels of land. And the next is simultaneously, one of the buyers of one of those pieces of land wants to do a subdivision. The way that our code is written, there are certain criteria that one has to meet in order to get approved for a major subdivision. Deciding how the use, as long as it falls within the zoning code of future land, isn't a condition that we could impose
Right.
on somebody.
I don't have any problems with this other development if they put a traffic light in.
Yeah, and that'll be, those kind of discussions will all happen through the engineers and through Road and Bridge, through traffic studies. And so this initial one is kind of our, this is what it's gonna, this is the idea, and the next phase is gonna have a lot more of those details and, a lot more of the information that comes from engineers and studies and determining what's needed and what isn't. But this is the first one, us saying, hey, before you go spend all that money, do we just like the concept? And here are the things we want you to change about your idea and your concept right now. And then if Road and Bridge and or any kind of traffic studies say that there needs to be a light because of the traffic there, then that'll be something that will be asked at that point.
Okay, and there'll be county roads in that's something with PUD.
Typically, the way that it works is if the developer brings their subdivision roads up to county spec, and get them approved, then county ends up maintaining them at that
Right,
point,
I understand.
but not until then. Any other public comment? Anybody I didn't speak of? Okay. Any other questions from planning commission members before we entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
No.
Alright, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Edwards moves to close the public hearing.
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor of closing public hearing? Aye. Okay, so now at this point, the public hearing is closed, we can't take any more public comment, we can't engage anymore with the public. Our commissioner gets to go home and then have dinner. And then we'll discuss, you're welcome to sit here and listen to us make our discussion and make a motion. Our motion will be to, in a form of some sort of recommendation to planning, or I'm sorry, to the county commissioners, who will then vote on this file at their next commissioner meeting, which
I think that's in 2 weeks.
will be in 2 weeks. Okay? Anybody wanna start?
My concern is the single point of access to the other two potential parcels.
Yeah.
After this is split. It's a real cataract that potentially is developed in the future.
Cause it's, what is it, 35 feet, you've got 17 and a half feet on each side of that property line. I don't know, that's not a whole lot of space for emergency services.
No, and those are irregularly shaped parcels as well, which makes it a little bit more difficult.
So my thoughts on that are twofold. One is, if somebody goes to try to develop those in the future, they have to figure out how to create access that gets approved. And
Right.
so that's gonna have to be somehow. Either that's gonna be through the existing subdivision, or it's gonna have to be through the other parcels and going all the way down to Evergreen Drive, or whatever that has to look like. But in my opinion, if the current landowner is fine with that being the access for those two lots, then it creates a space to where I just question whether or not you want like a thoroughfare being put in for something that may end up just being two single-family lots.
But then that, so,
Because can we have that plat put back on the,
Trees, yes.
on the screen?
and would they have, for those tracks, would there have to be then a mini subdivision, or how would that?
Yeah, like if somebody wants to develop those they're gonna have to come to us and do this, and they're gonna have to meet the road requirements. So is there the one that shows all the tracks and not this piece? Yeah, so
Right there.
if track C and D and or A want it, and that isn't an adequate access point, they're gonna have to go all the way to Evergreen Drive. Or get an easement through this if it's not done.
You're gonna have to have
Not
2
critical.
points of access, I just want
Correct.
to point that out.
So,
So tract A is not critical because it does have access to Evergreen, but the other two are buried parcels.
But they're 3-acre lots.
Mhm.
And I guess, yeah, and I don't, I mean, I could see this subdivision phasing into that.
Right. And I guess that's my biggest concern, is
Right.
were this to expand into the other two parcels, that you've left yourself a single cataract, but it seems like
Instead of more, right?
it's a problem. It just seems like potentially a problem.
So, might I suggest that, I think both perspectives are good, and so what we wanna do at this point perhaps is look at track B's access to be adequate enough to take a higher density. And then when C and D would be, if they ever were chosen, or A, to be further developed out, then the burden will be on the developer of those tracks to find that secondary. But at this point, there does seem to be the ability to look at that 35 foot access and possibly make that like a 50-foot access. So that you have, from this standpoint, consideration of the future use of those parcels, and then, because we can't see the future, allowing whatever that future use, so it could be kind of a, making sure that the PUD is thoughtful of those two parcels, but when those are developed in the future, there should be a certain amount of planning that they would have to do in order to make those accessible for whatever use that they would want.
Limiting access also potentially limits future development. That could be a good thing.
Well, I'm guessing that just this conversation alone is gonna make both the developer and the lot owner say, I kinda want that in case we wanna do that someday, so I have a feeling we don't. I just don't know really how to condition that other than to say that I think that's something that they should strongly consider. But to me, as it sits to us for granting the subdivision, those two parcels aren't, other than being an additional filing to this, aren't really like
Right.
stand out, I wanna develop this little 3-acre parcel into a subdivision. So unless it was an additional phasing to this, which then tract B has to figure it out anyway.
Right. No.
I would have a hard time like denying the subdivision request, keeping the development separate and only the major subdivision at hand is like, I'd have a hard time denying this if he's giving them access. So if tract B, D and C have access through tract B right now, then that portion of this application, I guess that's
Understood.
how I'm looking at that. And then the PUD application is that I think they should consider it, but we're at sketch plan and
Can we go back to the other drawing that shows the dwellings, please? That one. Back one. And can you tell us so we have single car garages and driveway access. Can you tell me how much driveway we have before you get to the garage in feet?
yeah, how many off-site parking spaces?
Yeah, or you can tell me.
You can tell Anne, and then she can tell us. It's a really fun little game.
1 to 2 cars, so every house will have 3 to 4 spots.
40 feet, and then.
Okay, 40 feet, so truly two parking spaces outside of the garage.
Yes.
But no on-street planned parking at all.
And that was one thing that, was kind of in my notes because I know in all of the other ones that are going on right now, that's a huge piece is how, many households have 3 cars. And these would allow for 2, but tandem.
Well,
And-
the critical part here is gonna be the same problem that is being experienced in rail yard. Is these are single driveways,
That's what I mean.
and a lot of what's parked are trailers and immobile objects, not just cars. So it does create a cataract potentially with the toys that everybody wants to have up here.
Well, it's, yeah, I mean, it's
I mean,
consistently a problem everywhere, right? It's
I
like,
mean, it's properly addressed here, unlike some of the other
Mhm.
subdivisions, but it is something to think about.
parking.
Well, except.
So the right of way down this street doesn't allow for a car to park, or there's no parking allowed?
There's no parking allowed.
It wouldn't, it's not gonna be wide enough to allow fire access if there were cars parked along the right of way, so it would be no parking.
Okay.
Right.
And typically, the county, at least County Road and Bridge in the past, has not been in favor of it anyway, because then they have to manage that for snow removal when they take over the roads.
Can we go back to the other, so track C and D? It would, access is one thing, are there any current utility easements for power or gas, or how would, if they were gonna develop that, is that then another issue?
I think that's the development of those into something other than single-family homes, if that's a concern. You mean for future development?
Right, is there any current easements, along here?
It would probably be that right of that right of way.
Right away. It'll be right through the right with they're creating,
Okay, that's where,
or the easement that they're
Access and
creating.
utility.
Yeah, it's the 35-foot,
that would be the
yes,
easement,
yes.
okay,
So they're creating that through this plating.
okay.
There's also sewer along West Pines.
Right, and we talked about that in the staff report, that there's several different options for the sewer line.
Right.
Right. Okay. And this is all Parkville water?
Yes.
Everything's local there.
Okay.
Is gas gonna be brought down?
They are proposing to bring gas, but we're not taking public comment, but.
Yes. Yeah, we can't take any more public comment, but yes, there is natural gas. I know snow storage was somebody's issue at one point, but it felt like, I mean,
What was
there's,
the other one with each of the individual lots, please?
So Michael Irwin reviewed their plan for snow storage and gave us a thumbs up. He also weighed in on putting the sidewalks on the northern side of Timber Ranch Road in order to be able to manage the snow better and make those sidewalks more usable. And so Michael has reviewed this and met with him early, the developer early in designing it to accommodate their ability to manage the snow.
great. Yeah, I think my only, when I brought up phasing earlier, my,
CC, just.
Oh, we're in discussion.
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
No, good catch.
they'll have to wait.
Sorry.
Sorry, okay. As far as the phasing piece, one of the reasons I asked about that, which, I mean, this is a small-ish parcel, not a small development at all, but, is just when, if there becomes any like viability concerns along the way, like we've had this conversation with a few other subdivisions. I mean, this one seems like a totally viable situation, so I'm not at all inclinating that, but, just having something that is moving down the road so that if it doesn't or can't or stalls, it's not a giant, construction zone until you can figure out how to complete that, because obviously anything can happen with our economy these days. So that was the reasoning for my question about phasing that I just wanted to explain, was just the idea of making sure that you're doing what's needed when it's needed instead of the whole thing just to keep it from, if there were ever a stall, that it's still a nice place to live during that time.
And to piggyback on that, it also provides us the ability and the capacity, when we're phasing in, when we have a phasing plan, it's more manageable for staff for inspections, getting the engineers here, they collateralize it in phases. And it just makes it more manageable in a small rural planning department, as well as it allows the developer to approve the development in stages. So it kind of works twofold really nicely.
And then, did I see something in the application about color scheme? It seemed like there was a note of that, but didn't spell it out, I don't think, but.
His discussion in the palette, a color palette will be selected to keep cohesion throughout all homes. So there is, it'll be forthcoming at preliminary, but they are proposing to provide a color palette, at preliminary.
So did the Westwoods use that same wording? Cause,
No.
okay, I was just curious,
No.
cause there's many,
We didn't talk about the aesthetics of the colors of Westwood.
okay.
Oh man, I just lost it.
That I recall anyway.
Right, right. So, well, I just wanna have a little bit of a discussion around the fact that, so this is all urban residential area. How many times over and over are we gonna take that designation away and allow for major subdivision and PUD zoning? Like, how often can that happen to where everything becomes?
Well, urban residential allows for this density.
Right, but I mean, how often are you gonna do that before you take away from,
How far
Well, I guess what
down
I'm saying
County
is
Road
that-
4 does the
how is that
comprehensive plan allow
gonna
it?
creep out continuously?
So it basically, the boundary that's going to get to affect this more is where there's centralized utilities. That's where the comp plan wants to see us to consider a higher density of housing. And where, and again, this isn't a density issue as much as it is the setbacks and the lot sizes and kind of the design of the layout more over than the density, because it's actually less dense than what the traditional zoning, but the future land use maps are suggesting this kind of compact development pattern in areas that would be near centralized utilities. And so that's going to kind of drive where, and closer, that's more walkable, more connected, closer to our services, things like that. That's where you wanna place this kind of development.
Well, and in what I was getting at is the PUD is not asking for a variance in density. So like, it's doing a variance on lot size, right?
Lot size and setback.
And setbacks, and that's the only reason it's PUD. Otherwise, if they met the variant, or they met the criteria for lot size, and then it could still be this dense. It should be denser than that, because that's the zone. So the UR zone that's orange behind Ann's Head is all allowed to be this dense
Okay,
per our current code.
okay,
The only reason this is PUD is because they want a smaller lot size than is allowed in there, but not even by that much, and then
okay.
the setbacks, so that they could do it all on that narrow, so, I just wanted to clarify that that's
Right.
the change, not, that we're not changing the density in this situation, so to answer your question, I mean, we could keep density happening in all of that orange area.
Right, so I mean, cause there's other tracks or other properties further down County Road 4 and County Road 9 that could essentially,
Not many, but yeah,
It goes all the way.
There's only really County Road 9 has any parcels that are big
Does it
enough.
go all the way to the railroad track?
It goes all the way to County Road
Everything else is
90,
already platted
just
pretty
before
much.
the railroad track.
But
Right, four.
could they apply to have it?
Anyone can, I mean, there's, as long as you meet the criteria, and you, so PUD is a hybrid zoning. You know, you have to provide proof that it's better than what the underlying district, zoning can provide. And you have to meet, you know, all of the criteria that we outlined, but traditionally, you know, some communities, Eagle County, for instance, you're gonna find out that almost every development's a PUD. It opens the door for a negotiation between, the county and the developer too, so there's a lot of benefits, there's a trade-off. It's not
Right,
just
but like,
that
so track A could change into
they can
that, and then the
petition for
property
it.
to the north of track A as well can petition and then just keep
Absolutely.
throwing more and more, okay.
And it truly can run all the way down, to the railroad track,
Right, okay.
potentially. A lot of that's gonna be limited by municipal services though. The farther you get, the more challenging that is.
Right, like keeping in mind when we're on well and septic, our code doesn't allow you to have any lots that are less than 2.5 acres. So we have well and septic systems, you're gonna have to create, you know, that separation. We also require new subdivisions to be able to have the ability to show that it can support a failed septic system. So we don't allow anything smaller than 2.5 acres once we get to well and septic. So since the utility and the infrastructure, connectivity, amenities, things like that really drive the ability to support this kind of density. Or changes.
The one thing I just wanted to, mention quick, and I just wanted to make sure the wording was in there. I think it is, just that the housing component that I think the applicant has as a workforce, and we've talked about as portable. That I see the wording that you have here in here, Anna, is shall comply with Lake County Affordable Housing Guidelines, which I think they're trying to finalize, but there is a big question on what's workforce and what's affordable and what the deed restrictions would be, and I just would offer that regardless of what was maybe presented today, that it really is that they'll work with the housing authority to determine what those units should be, because I think there's a lot of conversation about whether or not there should be income restrictions attached, or if it should be Lake County workforce, or if it should be, you know, so anyways, there's a lot of
Yeah.
discussion around that, and so rather than holding the developer to the statement of it's gonna be, you know, meeting AMI limits to a certain extent, just saying that that's a conversation that they still have with the housing authority based on what those housing guidelines turn into.
Yeah, I was just looking at Jackie's comment of, I'm thrilled that this development is proposing to bring 10 affordable housing units to the community. This represents 11% of the entire project. According to the developer, these units will be offered at $200,000 below market. If interest rates stay high, that discount could increase further. They intend to apply deed restrictions to these units, ensuring their long-term affordability to future buyers, given the housing crisis currently facing Lake County. Affordable housing solutions are critical. The Lake County Regional Housing Authority fully supports this development and their efforts to provide much-needed affordable housing to our community. So, yeah, if you want to fine-tune a, that, you know, the applicant will continue to work with the housing authority to develop the best deed restriction and mix or something like that.
Yeah.
And also there was nothing about short-term rentals in this at all.
No, they're PUD, they're not, so in their PUD control doc, the only thing that they had indicated, we asked them to consider broadening their uses. They didn't have short-term rentals listed as a use within their planning, their control doc, which is basically their development code. And in fact, we asked them to consider some additional uses because it was just residential.
And is there anything on the Westwoods for, specifically for short-term rental? Cause I know they have a bunch of ADUs, right, like,
They are allowed short-term rentals under our short-term rental code.
Yeah, so everything's subject to our code, our short-term rental code.
And these units do not include ADUs. I didn't see, there are
No.
none anywhere. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
But nothing, I mean, if there was room in the lot, later on the homeowner could build an ADU.
ADUs on less than an acre require a conditional use permit. And,
But it's possible.
well, I don't know what the lot coverage, are you maintaining the 67% lot
or about an
coverage?
eighth of an acre.
So, it would require a conditional use permit, they're not proposing ADUs in their design. But that would have to go through a planning decision, that would have to go to you to determine anything that's under an acre is required to get a conditional use permit before they would be able to apply.
Yeah, cause I'm thinking like, well, if you did something above a garage, cause they were, you know.
yeah, but they'd have to come to us for a permit.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But that's,
Yeah, they're not trying to change anything from the zoning requiring making ADUs like a use by right, they're not proposing anything, they're not
Okay.
Anything?
Anyway,
I mean, so the only other thing is just from a driving by and seeing what's on Evergreen is, I feel that these type of developments with the modular shotgun style type stacked homes, there's not a lot of character, other than the porches that are on them and whatnot, and so I would just hope to see in the future something that makes it a little bit more broken up than if you look down those houses at Evergreen, it's just,
but it's all about cost, man, like, I think you're asking
I
for
understand
architectural design
that.
and affordability in one, and it's just not possible
I mean,
with that kind of modular construction is boxes, you know, and as soon as you try to
I get
change
it.
roof lines, you're dealing with snow loads
I
and,
get it, but you know, I was maybe hoping for like variance in different lot sizes where there's, it just breaks it up a little bit. And when you look down Westwoods, they're just, every corner, it's like a fan deck of houses.
So and remember, this one's got a 25 or potentially 35-foot easement off of the road too, with trees, so there will be a break to that. On this development, separately from the other ones there on Evergreen, at least from the majority of the traffic.
And I think my thing is more so like the front of every single home is exactly this, you know, I
That's,
mean, there's
that's how you
set
do
one back
that.
5 feet, one, you know, 5 feet, 4, I don't know, that's just to, you know,
yeah,
we
but
talk
then you run
about
out
the
of
look and
driveway
feel.
space, and then you run out of, you know,
It's a tough call only because of the cost right now.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
valid point. but it's
Yeah,
a-
I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it as a, I'm just,
well, and I think the idea, I think it's funny because there's definitely different perspectives on it, like, a lot of the people love that the Westwoods houses look like downtown like this, and they're all different colors, and then you brought it up as being a really bad thing, so I think it's just gonna all be about perspectives on this,
yeah,
so
I mean,
it's one of those, like, I think it's, but I think affordability wise, like, I don't know how you could
and I mean,
change this.
I think it's bad, you know, just as bad a color palette that looks all earth tones.
Right.
You know, you could see in Denver for,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
forever, it's all brown houses.
It's all the same, bro.
They're all the same,
All the same,
yeah, I don't think that's good either, I just,
Yeah. Okay. Anybody wanna make a motion?
Any concerns?
I just have this little guy at the end.
Thank you, and that goes on number 11 at the very end, okay. Good?
Well, we'll start this. You can have
Edwards
it.
moves the planning commission recommend conditional approval to the Board of County Commissioners, file number 24-23, Timber Ranch Major Subdivision Sketch Plan and PUD Sketch Plan, located west of the city of Leadville on tract 3B of the Saunders subdivision exemption, AKA 245 Evergreen Drive, containing 43.08 acres with the following conditions. Number one, the applicant shall obtain a copy of the best management practices from CPD and diligently follow the recommendations outlined during the overlot grading phase of development. Number two, the applicant shall improve the two water detention tracks so that they are usable when dry. Number three, the applicant shall explain at preliminary plat the intention of the proposed narrowness of the easternmost access, Virginia Drive, from County Road 4, given that the right-of-way does not appear to be any more narrow. The proposal will be subject to engineering review. Number four, the applicant shall discuss the lack of sidewalks on the two accesses to County Road 4 or provide them. If provided, pedestrian crossings shall also be provided across Timber Ranch Drive. In addition, the applicant shall consider the neighborhood trail connectivity over Evergreen Drive and County Road 4, and potentially provide pedestrian crossings at all three locations. The preliminary plat shall adequately address these items. Number five, the applicant shall explain at preliminary plat the intention of unequal driving widths on Timber Ranch Drive, understanding that one lane at 10 foot and the other lane at 11 foot may not be acceptable. Number six, the applicant shall be prepared at preliminary plat to address the adequacy of the width of the access to tract C and D, and how this access will be able to accommodate the urban residential zoning of those two tracts. Also, how will the access be built, maintained, and owned? Number seven, the PUD zoning control document shall include the possibility of home offices and daycare, either as conditional uses or uses by right, or both, depending on the impacts. Number eight, the trail along County Road 4 shall be hard surfaced. Number nine, the applicant shall develop and implement a noxious weed management program as recommended by the Lake County Soil Conservation District. Number 10, sorry, I should have read this first. Work with the housing authority to determine potential deed restrictions. And number 11, all statements made by the applicant in his application and in hearing are considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. And make the findings that all approval criteria of section 3.16.3 subsection H and section 3.11.3 subsection H have been met as presented in the staff report dated July 22nd, 2024.
Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion?
No, I appreciate you adding that.
This is for both?
Yeah.
Okay, we're not doing separate ones, okay, that's what I just wanted, that's all.
Okay. Joey Edwards,
Yes.
Jason Rufo,
Yes.
Steve Stevens,
Yes.
Heather Lind, yes. Motion for recommendation with conditions gets passed on to the county commissioners, and they will hopefully listen to our
Yes.
recording since they weren't here, and
Listen to the deliberation and the public hearing.
yes. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Come on, Jason.
Oh,
Unless you wanna hang out
move
here.
to adjourn.
There's no.
That's the second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. How about we will take the recommendation to the board and